next speaker this morning was actually sitting in the audience this time last year as a delegate, understanding what was happening in the data world. And actually, little did she know that her boss, Mike, was going to ask her to run the analytics team in her organization. And so now she's leading a team of 800 people across the group, and is in one of the biggest CDO roles that exist. Not only does she enjoy Love Island, as I hear, but actually is a true advocate of being different and isn't afraid to create change versus the way things are normally done in an organization. And to hear more about that story and that journey, please welcome to the stage the Chief Data Officer for Sainsbury's Group, Helen Hunter.
What a sight for sore eyes you all are. Have you taken a moment to have a look? Yes? We are many. Yes, it's brilliant. Hello, I am Helen. I am the Group CDO for Sainsbury's. That is horrible. Yeah, right. I am left-handed, right-brained, intuitive, synthesizing. I am embarrassed to confess that I am one of the people that Liz has just described. I couldn't tell the time on an analog clock until I was in secondary school. And honestly, my grasp of the times tables above 6 remains weak to this day. I have that inherent fear of maths that has been described. So how does someone who is terrified of maths end up as the Group Chief Data Officer at Sainsbury's? Well, a story. I vividly remember the day at primary school when I was introduced for the first time to Boolean logic, first described by George Boole in his 1847 book, The Mathematical Analysis of Logic. As you know, the variables in Boolean logic are true and false, usually denoted 0 and 1. And the main operations in Boolean algebra are and, or, and not. I was completely awestruck and bewitched by the beauty of this thing. So why do I embrace data? I embrace data for 3 key reasons. Firstly, for me, data is stories about what humans do. And as somebody who ended up at university reading modern history, I love a good story. Secondly, I passionately believe that truly great analytics, science, and reporting requires that we're curious. And it requires that we apply our creativity to the work that we're doing. And thirdly, I believe that what makes us great as analysts and scientists is the ability to pose really provocative and new questions. For me, it's the magic combination of fantastic scientific discipline when coupled with human ingenuity and creativity that leads us to be able to uncover new insights. Yeah, it's that ability to tell new stories, as Hans Rosling described it, the ability to use my data set to change your mindset. It's those things, the ability perhaps to give Sainsbury's the edge over our competition, that I find so thrilling and exciting about working in data. So what do I do in my current role? Well, over the last 8 years at Sainsbury's, I have been Director of Marketing Innovation, I've been Director of Data and Relationship Marketing, and those roles have seen me intersect data, digital, loyalty marketing, performance marketing to build new products and propositions for Sainsbury's. In this role, I'm doing something slightly different. I am accountable for unlocking the use of data across our group and for finding new creative ways to understand Sainsbury's customers, all in the service of our corporate strategy to know our customers better than anyone else can. So it's strange for me, when I look back to that little girl who fell in love with Boolean logic at the start of her journey into data, I see the red thread through my career. I just couldn't have predicted the glorious, strange path that I went on to get here. So, I became Group CDO on the 16th of April this year. Can you tell it's imprinted on my brain? Yes, it's a role that our group had never had before. So what do you do when confronted with that chasm? You go, oh, thank you, me? Oh, yes, why not? And then you go, it's terrifying. Now, a while ago, I was very lucky that our Group HR Director, Angie Risley, recommended a book to me, so I'm going to recommend it to you. And it's this book. It's been around a while, but it's incredibly useful. And it's all about thinking differently when you step into a new role, whether that be in your current organisation or you're in a new organisation. So that's exactly what I did. I reread the book. And as a result of writing the book, I wrote a statement for where I wanted to be, a really ambitious, really awesome statement of where I wanted to be after 90 days in the role. I then spent a significant amount of time with my stakeholders, my internal customers, but also in one-to-ones with every single member of my team to understand their perceptions and what was working well and what we fundamentally needed to do differently. Because as an aside, I believe generally the team are the ones that have the wisdom to help us set the direction. So after 9 days, I was able to start to lay out an indicative view of the emerging themes that would underpin the strategy for the role. And then I made the team do some strange games, and I'll come back to that later. So this is the first opportunity that really was shouted out to me from stakeholders. As a group, we have an enormous amount of data. So for those of you who are less close to Sainsbury's, and don't worry, this is not going to be an excruciating pitch, we obviously have a very significant food business. We now wholly own Nectar, so we have all that loyalty data and coalition data. We have a bank, we have a financial services proposition in Argos. But beyond that, there's some of the stuff that you might not have thought about. We understand the recipe makeup of every single product we sell. We understand the farms that our milk comes from. We understand how much milk those cows are producing. We have loads of information about truck movements. It's an incredibly rich and exciting environment in which to be able to explore and ask those big provocative questions that I described. However, there was a sense that we weren't executing with sufficient pace to allow some of the brilliant analysts, and there are lots of them from across the group in the room, really access that information in the way that they'd like. So the first opportunity was, what do we do about that? And starting to think differently about how we could create a strategic data ecosystem, cloud-based, to really support the kind of analytical experimentation that our colleagues want to do. And then the second thing the team were telling me was that as analysts and scientists and reporting experts, they were taking on laundry lists of work. Yeah? Endless, low value, repetitive activity. This is quite pointed because in my house I do laundry and my husband's the one that cooks dinner. Okay, I have 2 small children. Laundry is endless and repetitive and never ending. Okay, that is a different talk and we won't go there. So these are the kinds of things that our stakeholders were saying, and indeed our own team was saying. Oh, we go through these lengthy prioritization processes. You're working on all the stuff that we as a finance function said we couldn't do because we didn't have bandwidth. You're failing to ever get to the end result, the punchline, which clearly was not a great place to be. And let me bring this to life by introducing you to Srinath. This is Srinath on the right-hand side. When I met Srinath back in April, he had been working in the finance reporting BI team for 7 years. He had spent 7 years titivating data in reports, tweaking attributes and variables, changing the layout, yeah, for a stakeholder, an internal customer he had never met, and whose feedback he would typically receive second or third hand, most of the time, at least 2 or 3 weeks after he'd effected the change. Yeah? On the other side of the fence, we had a finance customer, and that was Srinath's customer, who was saying, we are qualified management accountants, and we are getting up typically at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning in order to munge data in Excel reports before stores open at 7. We don't have, they were saying in their in-colleague engagement surveys, the tools for the job. So we had, as you can see, a fair amount of distance between these two groups and a fair degree of unhappiness. Yeah? To bring that to life. So, having done all that stakeholder listening, I was able, after the first month, the first 30 days, which was part of my plan, to lay down my strategy for what I want the Group Chief Data Office at Sainsbury's to achieve. And bear with me, because I'm just going to talk about the highlights of it. We exist to execute faster in the sharing and unlocking of all our data insights to deliver on our strategy, as I mentioned. And that has 5 key components. On the sharing side of things, it means democratizing that amazing asset that we sit on as a group. It means upgrading our data quality, filling in gaps in our data landscape. On the other side, it means really making sure that we are working hand in glove with our business customers to help them unlock the insights they need to transform the proposition, the operation of our business to better serve our customers. And in the middle, very critically, and Pyle alluded to this, as a group, we have something like 800 professionals who come from hardcore data, analytics, and data science backgrounds. That's huge, and one of the reasons I exist is to help network that community together to drive learning and propagate value faster. Great. So how does it feel to be in a new role with a strategy like that? This is how it feels. Yeah, would you put that red sock in that wash? Yeah? So, I have, I will be completely honest, for a very, very long time, struggled with the voice that tells me I'm not good enough. And to bring that to life for you, I'll give you 3 examples of where this has fundamentally affected my career choices. When I was at university, I read modern history. I was absolutely convinced that I wasn't good enough to work in an advertising agency, which is at the time, for whatever reason, what I thought I wanted to do. I thought I wasn't cut out for it. I wasn't as good as some of my peers who were applying for the big agencies back in the mid-90s. I've been approached to take roles in central strategy teams, and I have convinced myself that I wouldn't be good enough to take those roles because I'm insufficiently financially savvy. And more recently, it took me a long time to believe that I was ready to be at the level I am now in the organisation. I was very slow to want to be promoted to director level. And I wonder about this. I wonder why we feel this way, because I suspect I'm maybe not the only person in the room who sometimes feels that lack of belief in themselves. And that takes me to one of the most least useful pieces of advice I've ever been given, I'd say, which is that periodically through my career, I've been told, well, the thing is, Helen, you just need to be more confident. Yeah, who's had that advice? Hands in the air. Yes, I see you. Right. Well, we can no more be more confident than we can become taller, right? Yes? Well, I mean, fair enough. I could wear heels, but, you know, I'm 5'5"3/4 and proud of it. I cannot grow. Okay, so let's talk about that. Why don't we feel confident? Perhaps we fear failure. Perhaps we fear judgment. And this goes to a theme I think that Liz was talking about in the Q&A. What I'd really encourage us all to do is embrace the idea that whilst we can't feel more confident, we can show more courage. Yeah, and courage is different to bravery, isn't it? Bravery is people who don't feel fear or pain. Courage is people who do feel that, but do it anyway. It's so important. So next time you're given the advice to be more confident, ignore it and think, what I will do is try and show more courage. Yeah? So chuck that red sock in the wash. Maybe not. That would be bad. Don't do that. Don't do that. Okay. So, another book for you to read. I'm sure some of you have read it. Mitch Joel wrote a book a while back now called Control-Alt-Delete. And one of the things that Mitch Joel talks about in that book is the importance of being prepared to be incompatible just a little bit. And what he means by that is the preparedness to make people feel a bit uncomfortable, to disrupt people, perhaps not be as liked as perhaps you might want to be, because if you're going to drive change, that is something that's going to happen. So that's a good book, Mitch Joel, Control-Alt-Delete. Now, another boss of mine back in the day said this much less prosaically. He said, Helen, the thing is, to make an omelette, you have to break a few eggs. Yeah, that's not as good, is it? Read Mitch Joel, that's better. I was very struck by this statement. I'm sure we all know who Kate Spade is. Very sadly, she died earlier this year. She's the big designer. And she said this, I believed I could, so I did. Yeah? Powerful, isn't it? So, back in May this year, with my leadership team, we all took a big breath and showed a bit of courage. And the reason we did that is because of all that stakeholder feedback and colleague feedback about the fact that the way we were working wasn't working. Too much laundry, too much endless, repetitive, low-value work. And part of that was driven by the fact that, not atypically, I think, we were organized by functional discipline. We had a data team, the technical data designers and data modelers. We had what I've called here plumbing, which is a bit rude, but infrastructure people. We had BI people, we had science people, analytics people, and projects people. To this day, we're none of us sure what they did. Okay, so we decided to do something a bit radical. We decided to take a deep breath, hold hands together, and fundamentally change our operating model. And we introduced the concept of agile analytics. So agile discipline from software engineering, but also applicable to enterprise. Because what does it value? It values delivering value early and often. It values experimentation. It values co-located teams working together on common goals. So this is what we did. And we created those multidisciplinary teams against our destination Sainsbury's outcomes, of which 5 are here and will mean nothing to you, and worry not, I'm not doing the Sainsbury's strategy chat. Suffice to say, we organised ourselves in end-to-end squads of mixed data capability to get away what our business stakeholders were asking of us. So let's get back to Srinath. You remember unhappy Srinath, who'd spent 7 years in report titivation for a customer he'd never met? Well, I met with that customer. I said, okay, we have to change this. We want you to come with us on this agile journey. So in 10 weeks, Srinath and his colleagues in the finance automation team, alongside finance stakeholders who were owning the output, and that's very serious looking chap there. He's our director of central finance. He's very serious. Working together on getting this report automated. And what they've automated is something that's called our daily sales and waste report. So that's the thing that the finance analysts have to come in horribly early every day, 365 days of the year to run. Well, we've now fully automated it. We did this in 10 weeks. It is issued every day with no human intervention by 5 a.m. Happy Srinath, happy finance colleagues. That is something that in the mythology of the organization we have failed to be able to do for the last 10 years. Another example, every day our stores receive something like 130,000 delivery units. For those who aren't sure what a delivery unit is, that is one. Big pallets of stock, cling wrapped, coming into the back door of our shops, 130,000 every day. And we spend millions of pounds on labour in colleagues taking that stock from the delivery unit and walking it round the shop floor. The labour cost is in the thousands and thousands of kilometres that colleagues walk to put that product out on shelves. And we said to ourselves, the provocative new question was, surely there is a better use of colleagues' time. They don't particularly love doing this. They want to serve our customers. Surely there's a better way of doing this. So we've built an algorithm. Does a very important thing. It says, what is the optimum way to break that pallet down, knowing what stock is on it, to minimize the amount of distance a colleague has to walk to efficiently break down that pallet. Yeah? And in terms of data derivation that we've had to go through, the benefit of working in a multidisciplinary squad, we have codified every single floor plan and every single shelf in order for the algorithm to conduct that piece of mathematical optimization. So it creates outputs that are much more like that. Yeah? Really, really, really exciting problem mathematically to solve. Again, only possible because we're working end-to-end in these multidisciplinary teams. So what does the delicate wash cycle look like in agile analytics? It looks a bit like this, collaborating super closely with our business stakeholders on the outcomes they're trying to achieve. Forces them to really think about the highest value pieces of work that they want us to be doing. Yeah? It gives them pause for thought to say, actually, is that random request about why we sold less carrots yesterday more important than understanding the root cause of why we're unable to pick customers' orders in full for online grocery? Yeah? Making sure we've done all the data diagnostics. There's no point in dreaming the big dream if the data doesn't exist, right? Creating backlogs of work, planning how we'll conduct that work within the multidisciplinary team, and then going into these 2-week sprints to drive analytical outputs constantly, and then collectively celebrating. When we automated that daily sales and waste report, it was a win for finance as much as it was for us. Yeah? So, that's frightening, isn't it? But that is an agile analytics sprint planning board. Let's not go there. So, does it work? Does it work? Well, here is my washing line of results. The orange line is the net happiness of my team from May to September. So you can see that our average weighted happiness is going up. It's because colleagues like Srinath feel more empowered. They feel close to the customer. They have a sense of what their purpose and contribution to the organization is. And the red bars are net happiness. So this is the proportion of colleagues saying they are 8 or more out of 10 happy, taking away those colleagues who say they are 5 out of 10 or below happy, giving us net happiness. So you can see that in August, we're all clearly in the holiday mood, and we reach peak net happiness. September, slightly less good. But on the whole, I think we're getting some positive momentum. And for me, really, that is the empowering impact of conducting analytics in a much more agile way. So, closing message. 83% of colleagues in the team now say that compared to last year, they feel much closer to Sainsbury's strategy and what we're here to achieve than they did last year. So for me, that is a real validation of what we're trying to achieve at Sainsbury's Group. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Helen, thank you.
Pleasure.
Really appreciated. We are going to open up to Q&A for a few minutes, but I do have a question for you, Helen. Mm-hmm. So, when you were thinking in your own mind at this point about the approach and changing the approach for the analytics team, how did the conversation go with the stakeholders you had to sell it to?
Well, I vividly remember being in room 2.3. It's clearly very vivid because I remember the room. And said, quite serious, director of central finance and a couple of his senior finance managers saying, Helen, you've got 6 weeks or we're taking all of this offshore.
Wow.
And I said, great, you can do that. But all I would ask of you is for the next 6 weeks, you give it a go working in this way with me. Yeah? Because frankly, I didn't really have anything to lose at that point. The team and the stakeholders were both saying the model was broken. We needed to do something differently. Yeah? So what is brilliant is even after the first 2 weeks, because this is the power of working in a more agile way, those finance stakeholders started to understand the contribution they had to play and make to go forwards in this automation endeavor. Can you imagine the pain of reconciling to 2 decimal places a view of what we sold yesterday? I mean, it's riddled with boring data challenges, isn't it? Yeah, they started to understand that they had a role to play, and they were part of the reason we hadn't been successful to date. Because when you just lob things over the fence to one another with 2 to 3 week delays in feedback, I don't think you have to be a proponent of agile to think that's probably not the best way to work. Yeah. So they gave me the 6 weeks that I asked for, and because my team are fabulous, they delivered.
Amazing. That's great. We're going to open up to the floor. Has anybody got any questions? I'm sorry, I'm struggling to see up on the top floor. Just pipe up if you've got any questions for Helen. We've got some over here. We've got some mics. Just over in the back corner there, Bethany.
Oh, hello, Team Sainsbury.
Hello. No pressure. Whose idea was the staging? I can't see anything.
Yeah, thank you for that awkward silence. Hello. So my question around kind of doing analytics with agile, you need to, not only is it a change in the way that people think, but it's also a change in skill set as well. So, building a backlog, it's not actually that easy. So my question is, how did you address that skills gap? Did you have kind of external help, or did you go through upskilling, or was it neither of them, or a combination?
A combination. So not unusually, our technology team has been working in this way for a number of years because Agile came from software development, didn't it? So we were able to borrow some colleagues who had experience from that field. We did also engage external support. Jacob, in fact, I think they're here if you want to have a chat with them. They worked with us because enterprise Agile is slightly different to Agile in a software engineering context. But I suppose there is a difference for me between doing Agile, which tends to mean you walk around with Sharpies and a load of Post-it notes, yeah, and drive your facilities department mad because you've got whiteboards everywhere, and being Agile. Yeah, so being Agile requires you have a mindset that says we are open to experimentation and failure. It is as important in a data project to find out what is not true as much as it is to find out what is true. Yeah, that we are relentlessly focused on the most valuable work, and we are passionately focused on what is going to make the biggest difference for our customers. So I think intuitively, many of us in the analytics and data space, we have careers in this space because we feel that way. That's why we come to work, isn't it? We want to put data to work. We want to do good analytics and provide insight because we want to drive change. So some of us come already with part of that mindset, and I think it's really about just creating the environment in which that mindset can flourish. And then, yes, a few of the tools along the way are helpful, like how to run a good backlog prioritization session, for which you might need a bit of support. So we did a blend of both. Lizzie, who is sat here at the front, Lizzie's running Agile in marketing analytics. So if you catch her in the break, she'd be worth a chat too as well. That answer your question, or was that a waffly, embarrassing answer? Great, good, phew. Okay. This is mildly intimidating, I'll be honest.
Do we have a question down here? Is there a mic? Sorry, I'm looking and I can't see a thing. Whoever has the mic.
Hello.
Hello.
I've got a question on Agile as well.
Great.
What was your greatest challenge to implement that across the whole company? Obviously, a lot of your IT systems may not work in an Agile way. How can you get them to be on board to go through that journey with you?
Ooh, gosh, that's a complicated question. I would say one of the reasons that many of our analytical endeavors were failing is because, as I say before, we were working in far too siloed a way in terms of the different disciplines you need to get away an analytical project. So, for example, we've just done something with our agriculture teams that has increased the shelf life of milk by 2 days. This is massively significant for the farmers who are producing that milk, massively significant for the stock we hold in store, good for customers because of the cost of throwing away waste milk, etc. Now, in the past, we'd have plunged straight into doing that analytical work without working out where the data was going to come from about all that production data coming out of all the farms. Yeah? When we use an agile methodology, we can produce a roadmap with a customer for where they'd like to be in 3 months' time, 6 months' time. And we can start working now on some of the data that we'll need when we're in sprint on that particular analytical initiative 6 or 9 weeks' time. Yeah, and that's the big difference. And because you've got all the right people in the mix to get the work away, you're not wasting analyst time on sourcing data. You're not wasting science's time on loads of data cleansing activity. Yeah, so I would say that actually our interaction with IT has been relatively low. There are lots of the principles of Agile you can apply in analytics that don't concern D&T systems, things like that. Yeah? Team Sainsbury's, Naya, would you agree? Was there anything you'd add? No, good. Phew. Any more? To our left.
We have one over here.
Okay. Hi, Helen.
Hello.
Julia Josky. I work for the Insight Management Academy, and we support insight teams within organisations to improve their capability. I'm really interested to know from you what was the role of your insight people in this whole project? You know, those communicators, those translators, in terms of getting this improved data and information out into the organisation and making that drive change?
Yeah, so I'll just frantically flick backwards. You will be relieved to hear that not all the analysts and scientists in Sainsbury's work for me. That would be very bad. Okay, we are a community ourselves within Sainsbury's. So within the group CDO team, I have some advanced analytics colleagues and scientists. But Lizzie, that I've already called out, her bio's on the WID site, runs marketing analytics. She doesn't line report to me, but she's spiritually very much part of the broader community at Sainsbury's. So we have communities of practice now across the group where if you take a practice like store control modelling, Argos have a store control modelling methodology, Nectar have a couple, Sainsbury's Food has at least 2 or 3, Habitat probably have one. You get the point. Yeah, and what the community has been able to do is come together and compare approaches and see what results those different approaches provide and understand how, therefore, if a stakeholder was to ask an Argos colleague how they should control for a trial, they might get a very different answer and different KPIs back than if they asked a Sainsbury's Food colleague. So one of the things that we're working really hard on is how do we network that community and provide all the upskilling a colleague needs to be successful in a career at Sainsbury's Group, both technical and what some people would describe as non-technical, but I would describe as absolutely critical to be successful in this space, which is the ability to tell stories, the ability to use your intuition to unlock new insights, and change the organisation's mindset on the basis of your data. Yeah, so in answer, they're absolutely part of the broader conversation about how we grow our talent within the group.
Thank you, Helen. We have to say it's amazing to have you here. And
pleasure.
I genuinely do know it's one of the biggest jobs in data that you have, and it's amazing to see
She
you
doesn't
in the
make me
role.
feel better when she says that.
I'll take it back, not. It's a huge team, and you've created such value so quickly, and can't wait to see the next 12 months ahead for you.
Thank you. May I, on behalf of all of us, say to Roisin, Rachel and Pyle how amazing it is that they've done this for us.
Thank you.